Hi, welcome to the Village of Buchanan, April 2018 organizational meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So, I'm going to read the results of the March 20th, 2018 village election. These are totals for District 1 and 2. For mayor, 2-year term, Teresa Knickerbocker, 174. Robert Lepica, 47. Dan O'Neill, 2. For trustee, 2-year term, Richard Funchin, 165. Nicholas Zachary, 155. And we have some other entries. Jeremy Basso, 1. Art Connolly, 1. Willie Burnt, 1. Alwyn Park, 1. And Chuck Lent, 1. Congratulations. For justice, 4-year term, we have Jennifer Daly, 137. Oh, my goodness. Siobhan Funchin, 5 votes. And Dan O'Neill, 2. Now, we are going to administer the oath of office. I've asked our attorney, Stephanie Porteous, to read the oath for me. She will be swearing me in.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Do you need a microphone?
No, thanks.
Okay.
All right, can you raise your right hand?
Absolutely.
I state your name.
I, Teresa Knickerbocker,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
that I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the position of mayor
of the position of mayor
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congrats.
Thank you so much. And now, I would like to call up Deputy Mayor Richard Funchin. Nick, you can come up too, sure.
Twofer?
A twofer. No, I'm going to do you one at a time. Absolutely. Yes, sir. I state your name,
I, Richard Funchin,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York.
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the position of trustee
of the position of trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Can I stand here because I want to get a picture?
Yes, okay.
Mr. Zachary, Nicholas Trustee Zachary. You ready?
I'm ready.
Right hand. I state your name,
I, Nicholas Zachary,
do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and the Constitution of the State of New York,
and that I will faithfully discharge the duties
and I will faithfully discharge the duties
of the position of trustee
of the position of trustee
according to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
Thank you. Congratulations. I'd like to get a picture of just the three of us. Oh, wait, how am I going to do this? Hold on to Rich? Or? Great, thank you. Thank you, sir.
Welcome back.
I'm going to take a moment now. I thought about the swearing-in ceremony this evening, and I think about everything going on in the country and just the chaos and dissension and the fighting. But I thought about the oath, and I just want to reread this again. This is an oath most public officials take, and what we say is that I will support the Constitution of the United States. So the United States law supersedes the village law and the Constitution of the State of New York. So it's important to understand that, and I'm not pointing fingers at anybody, so please don't take that. But we all take an oath of office, and we're to abide by that oath of the office. Just my thoughts. Okay, comments from the floor, agenda items only. No comments? Okay. There's room in the end, too, for comments. Okay, Mayor Teresa Knickerbocker hereby appoints trustee Richard Funchen as her deputy mayor for the following official year, 2018 and 2019. Thank you, Rich, for accepting that.
I thank you, Mayor. It's been a privilege to work with you, and I know how hard you work for the village, so it's been great. I think everybody on the board, we're all in the one place going forward, and we're going to face all this hardship together, and I'm going to get through it. And with you as mayor, I think we stand a good chance of coming out really on the very positive side. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Rich. I appreciate that. And I want to thank you. Last month, I was not at the meeting. I had a confirmed case of the flu, and you stood in for me for the St. Patrick's dinner, and I hear you did a great job with that. I wasn't there. I missed that, and I always look forward to it. And then also last month's meeting, you stood in for me, and you did a great job. And I always appreciate, when you stand in for me and take over, and you always do a good job, and I thank you very much.
Thank you.
The following appointment officials to be made by Mayor Teresa Knickerbocker, except where otherwise indicated, subject to the approval by a majority of the Board of Trustees pursuant to Section 4400, 4402, and I'm not going to read this every time, 7712 and 718 of Village Law and Section 523 of the Real Property Tax Law. All appointments are for one-year terms, except otherwise, noted otherwise. And just bear with me, I have to read all this because this gets read into our record. So, right, Rich? Mm-hmm. Right, okay. So, for Assessment Review Board, Walter Newrouter, term expires in 2021. On a motion?
So moved.
All in favor? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Annual appointments. The following appointments of officials are made by Mayor Teresa Knickerbocker. Planning Board, James Samarco, term expires in 2023. We welcome Jim back. He was on our Planning Board once before, and he will be an asset to the village. Mayor Sean Murray will now be the chairman of the Planning Board. Zoning Board of Appeals, Gary Bell, term expires in 2023. We do have an opening on the zoning board at this time, so if there's anyone interested, please contact me or send a resume to the Village of Buchanan. Gary Bell will also be the chairman. Village Clerk Treasurer till 2019, Kevin Hay. Village Deputy Clerk, Cindy Kempter. Secretary to Zoning Board, Rosemary Martin, and also Planning Board, Rosemary Martin. Village Attorney, Stephanie Porteous. Associate Village Judge, Dan O'Neill. Court Clerk, part-time, Michelle Scalfani. Secretary Board of Trustees, Sue Matthews. Recreation Supervisor, part-time, Nancy Bayer. Senior Citizen Director, part-time, Gabriel DeRubo. Caretaker, part-time, Mario Salento. Building Inspector, Anthony Conti. Village Engineer, Hunt Engineering. Village Planner, F.P. Clark. Representative for the Senior Citizens Advisory Council, Gabriel DeRubo. Liaison to the St. Patrick's Day Parade, Richard Funchen. Representative to Historic Hudson River Towns, Richard Funchen. And Fire Inspector, Joe Chapia. On a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
The following members of the Board of Trustees are hereby appointed to the following committees for the ensuing official year 2018-2019. Administrative, entire board. Assessment, entire board. Auditing, entire board. Business Development, Richard Funchen. Education, Dwayne Jackson. Infrastructure, Teresa Knickerbocker. Legislative, entire board. Parks, Recreation, Nicholas Zachary. Public Safety, Cesare Pasquale. Veterans, Dwayne Jackson. So those are, no vote is necessary. It's my committee appointments. Number 4, establishing meeting dates, special meeting procedures, and adoption of the rules of procedure in the open meetings law. Regular meetings pursuant to Section 412 of the Village Law, the regular meeting of the Board of Trustees to be held at the first Tuesday of each month commencing at 7:30. Where holidays shall fall on the day of the meetings will be held the next day following the holiday. The meeting shall take place at the municipal building. The Board of Trustees workshop meetings to be held on the fourth Tuesday of each month commencing at 7:30 and will also take place at the municipal building. Special meetings. Special meetings will be held when matters of business warrant and shall be called by either the mayor or by 2 of the trustees of the Village of Buchanan acting together. In the event of a special meeting be called, the mayor, every member of the Board of Trustees shall be informed by telephone by the village clerk or another member of the Board of Trustees of the date, time, location, and subject of the special meeting. And unless the meeting is called to respond to an emergency concerning the safety and welfare of the village, notice of the meeting shall be given to the trustees and newspapers and posted on the village notice boards at least 72 hours in advance of the meeting and otherwise in conformance with the Public Officers Law. Quorum. A quorum shall be required to conduct business. A quorum of the 5 members Board of Trustees shall be 3. In the absence of a quorum, a lesser number may adjourn and compel the attendance of absent members. Executive sessions shall be held in accordance with the New York State Public Officers Law, Section 105. All executive sessions shall be commenced at a public meeting. Voting. Pursuant to the village law, each member of the board shall have 1 vote. The mayor may vote on any matter, but must vote in case of a tie. A majority of the totally authorized voting power is necessary to pass a matter unless otherwise specified by state law. An abstention, silence, or absence shall be considered a negative vote for the purpose of determining the final vote on a matter. Guidelines for public comment. The public shall be allowed to speak only during the public comment period of the meeting or at such other time as the presiding officer shall allow. Speakers must step up to the front of the room and speak into the microphone. Speakers must give their name, address, and organization represented, if any. Speakers must be recognized by the presiding officer. Speakers must limit their remarks to 5 minutes on a given topic and may be recognized again by the presiding officer after other speakers have had an opportunity to speak. Speakers may not yield any remaining time they may have to another speaker. Board members may, with the permission of the mayor, interrupt the speaker during the remarks, but only for the purpose of clarification or information. All remarks shall be addressed to the presiding officer. Speakers shall observe the commonly accepted rules of courtesy, decorum, dignity, and good taste, which include refraining from offensive, insulting, and threatening speech directed toward any person present or not present. Interested parties or their representatives may address the board with written communications. Written communications shall be delivered to the village administrator. Open Meetings Law. Pursuant to the Public Officers Law, the Board of Trustees hereby adopts the requirements of the Open Meeting Law and hereby adopts the notice requirements of the Public Officers Law as the official procedure of the Board of Trustees. The next organizational meeting will be held on April 2nd, 2019, so mark your calendars. Setting date for public hearing on tentative village budget. Pursuant to Section 5508 of the Village Law, the public hearing on the 2008-2019 tentative budget will be April 10th, 2018 at 7:30 at the Village Hall, and that is next Tuesday. Pursuant to Section 4412 of the Village Law, that the J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, 2003 Albany Post Road, Croton-on-Hudson, and the J.P. Morgan Chase Bank, Peekskill, New York, be designated as a depository of the Village of Buchanan, and that funds of the village be deposited in said bank and be subject to the withdrawals upon checks, notes, drafts, bill of exchange, acceptances, undertakings, or other orders for the payment of money when signed on behalf of this village by any of the following officers: Mayor Teresa Knickerbocker and Village Clerk Treasurer Kevin Hay. Designating official village newspaper. Whereas, in the opinion of the Board of Trustees of the aforesaid village, the Journal News newspaper is hereby designated as the official newspaper of the Village of Buchanan. Establishing mileage allowance, whereas the Board of Trustees has determined to pay a fixed rate for mileage as reimbursement to village officers and employees who use their personal automobiles while performing their village duties. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees will approve reimbursement to such officers and employees at the rate of 54.5 cents per mile. Adopting the village procurement policy, whereas the mayor and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Buchanan are required to adopt or formulate certain policies and procedures regarding procurements by the village, and whereas the village has previously adopted a procurement policy in conformance with all New York State laws and in conformance with the Office of the State Controller, and the board desires that policy to remain in effect, the procurement policy now in effect is, once again, adopted as the procurement policy of the Village of Buchanan. Wow, say that 10 times fast. Authorizing officers and employees of the village to attend conferences and seminars. Whereas General Municipal Law 77B authorized municipal officials and employees to attend schools, conferences, seminars, etc., conducted for the benefit of the local government with prior approval of the Board of Trustees and the mayor and the Board of Trustees of the Village of Buchanan, have determined that it is in the best interest of the village and its residents that officers and employees of the village from time to time attend conferences and seminars of public employees and officials for education and training and other similar purposes. It is therefore resolved that officers and employees are hereby authorized to attend the following schools, conferences, seminars, etc. NICOM's Annual Meeting and Training School, NICOM's Fall Training School for Fiscal Officers and Municipal Clerks, NICOM's Election Seminar, New York State Controller's Advanced Accounting Course, New York State County Management Association Annual Conference and Fall Training Seminar, Westchester Municipal Planning Federation Seminars, Westchester County Firearms and Deadly Physical Force Training. Do we get to go that too, Kev? No? Okay, just checking. And so, yeah, some of these are for police officers too. And Westchester County Police Academy Basic In-Service Training. On a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great. Okay, thank you for bearing with me, but we just, like I said, we have to read that into the record. Okay, so, we're going to now go to comments from board members. Nick, would you like to start first?
Sure, thank you very much. I want to both congratulate and thank the mayor and Rich Munchin for their willingness to serve and getting reelected. It's it's a very important thing for the village, and you know, a lot of people are not willing to put in that time, so I personally always like to thank the other board members for the time that they put in. You know, I just want to say that I agree with Rich. You know, we're going to all work together and get this done. We have the mayor who's working very hard, and everybody here is involved. We don't necessarily have to agree on everything, but we have to have respectful, open dialogue and communication, and that's the way we work. I always see it as a wealth when there are different ideas. So, you know, while it may not always be comfortable, a little disagreement occasionally I think is constructive. It makes you, you know, defend your position. It makes you really look at things, and I think it's in the best interest of all of us. And though we have disagreed at times, we overwhelmingly do work together to get things done, and I think that's a great thing. I want to always emphasize that we do value community input. We get small crowds here. I know other people watch on the online. If you go to the village website, there's a link for our meetings. People often do comment that they watch the meetings, and community input is invaluable. A very simple example happened to me the other day, where a couple of people just lent their perspective on something. Recently we've approved a small expenditure to put a couple of benches in front and make the Village Hall lawn a little bit more of a park. Nothing too elaborate, we're not having a roller coaster or anything, just some benches, make it a little more comfortable. And, I was thinking the benches should be facing the street because people like to watch people go by. But there were two moms out there with their carriages and their kids the other day, and when I spoke to them, they made a very simple point. No, that's no good. We need a bench that faces the park so we could see our kids when they're running around and playing. So, it's just a very simple example of input, but even things like that. Of course, we like ideas that are, a little bit more consequential, like how do we arise to the changes that are going to be going forth for the next few years with our loss of tax revenue from Entergy. There's some big things, but even the little things, always like to hear input, and the ideas are very helpful. So please stay involved, keep us on our toes, challenge us, agree with us, disagree with us, but stay involved. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Trustee Zachary. Trustee Funchin.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I want to thank you for the appointment as deputy mayor, and I hope I'm worthy of that honor, and I'll always be here to back you up on what you do. Nick, I think you said an awful lot there about, I agree with everything you've said there. I do want to thank the people in the village of Buchanan for the privilege of working for you. Even though nobody ran against myself and Nick, does not mean that we're going to take anything for granted. We are working hard. We are working to make sure that we get through this whole process with Entergy and come out in a very positive manner. I'm fairly confident we will. We've done an awful lot of work already, some of the groundwork that we don't see that goes on in the background. A lot of I know myself, and I'm certain with Nick and the mayor and everybody on the board, we spend a lot of time on the internet looking up cases, looking up precedents that have been set elsewhere on different things, as far as with Entergy closing down. But I also want to thank, and I'm sure it's the same for everybody on the board too here, their families who are sitting at home, who support us, going out at all time to different hours and going to different places. So I wouldn't be here without my wife just happened to be sitting out in the audience now. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather, so she volunteered to drive me down. But I thank her very much, and the support of my family and the support of the board here at all times that we have. But again, I want to emphasize that we're here to serve the community. We are public servants. And as Nick has so richly pointed out, it's good. Come up to us, talk to us. I live right in the corner. I'm sure people pass by, And funny, I would never have thought about that thing with the bench either.
Yeah, simple thing. Yeah.
It's a very simple thing, and you'd say, and then you'd have it in place, and people say, "Why'd you turn it that way?" So it's those simple things like that are very, very helpful. And I'm sure if you could see the way down the road that we can save money, or there's a more ingenious way of doing things, please come up to us and tell us about it and ask. We as a community have to work on this all together and get through it all together, and I sincerely believe we will. Finally, I just want to give a shout out to the committee for the St. Patrick's Day dance and the parade. It went off successfully. It was excellent. They are very hardworking. And now as one committee ends, the next one begins, Buchanan Day, and I know the mayor has got what what's it going to be called? A 90th anniversary, right?
We're having a birthday party.
Birthday party. So we look forward to those things. And again, I thank the community very much for the privilege of serving you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Good evening, fellow Buchanan. Democracy is alive and well in Buchanan, and that's a good thing. We're a small village with a lot of great values. Democracy has been under attack in the world from all sorts of folks that think our experiment in this thing we call America is doomed to fail. But let me state here and now, as my fellow trustees and mayor have stated, we're about the work of the people. I thank everyone who came out to vote, everyone who ran to show interest in our democracy. As Tip O'Neill always liked to say, all politics is local, and we're about as local as you can get. We have challenges ahead of us, but we will rise to the occasion. And those challenges will be daunting, but I think we, working all together, will meet those challenges. It was the French philosopher Alex de Tocqueville who talked about America, this thing, this point of contradictions in the early 1800s, this grand experiment that the founding fathers laid out for us to become. And as we work toward those goals of becoming the best that we all can be, the best country that we can be, to be that shining light on the hill, I'm excited about being a part of it at the local level, and I'm excited for everyone in the village that in this time, in this moment, we will indeed meet those challenges. And I especially like to thank those of you in the audience who tirelessly continue to come and be a voice for what you see in your village and what you don't see in your village, to keep us accountable. Yes, keep us accountable to you, because that's how democracy works. And we're all neighbors at heart. So again, thank you for your participation. Congratulations to my fellow trustees and the mayor. And the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwayne. I want to first start to thank everyone who came out to vote. Like Dwayne says, that's what democracy is all about. There's people in other countries that would love to vote, and they can't vote. I would like to thank all those who keep the village running for us smoothly and provide our services. You know, we have our highway foreman here today, Bob Wheeler, and our highway department, our police department. We have wonderful services. We have a great community. I want to personally thank Cindy Kempter in the office when Kevin was out on his medical and his surgery. Cindy stepped up to the plate and covered a lot of Kevin's duties. I also want to thank Sharon in the office. I don't want to forget anyone, so if I do, just let me know. I want to thank all our services, our fire department. I want to thank our recreation supervisor, you know, keeps things fun here. I want to thank Stephanie Porteous, our attorney. She has gone above and beyond here for the village. Like I've said before, we've adopted Stephanie, and we've also adopted Kevin. They are very concerned and want to see the community prosper and do well. So, you know, they're like family to us here. Kevin, I drive him crazy on a daily basis, but I think he likes it. So, right, Kev? It's like, Kev, what's going on? What's going on? But, you know, Kevin is both Stephanie and Kevin are huge assets to us here in the village.
Here.
Yeah, you guys are great. Our planning boards, our zoning boards, you know, who work in the best interest of the village. And then we have Sue Matthews. Sue has been with us, how many years now, Sue, she's been here a lot, yeah. But Sue always does a great job for us, and, you know, I thank you, Sue. And, oh yeah, our building inspector, you know, everyone, all of our employees, everyone that helps run the village, everyone that makes this a great community. I thank you so much. We couldn't do it without you. I thank our residents. They're great. They're really good people. And that's why we work so hard. This is our community, and I think it was Rich that said it. We are public servants. We are not politicians. This is our home. This is our community. Our friends, our family live here, and we just want to make sure that our community prospers and does well. I do want to do a very small update of where we are with the Entergy closing. Some good things have happened recently. And my first statement, because I want everyone to understand, this is not political. I'm not a registered Democrat. I'm not a registered Republican. I'm registered on the independence line. I am seeing good things happening. I'm seeing a lot, or all of our elected officials coming together, working for our community. And I'm so very impressed of what's going on. I've mentioned to you before, Senator Murphy he's a fighter. I can't say enough about him, and I really got to know him just after the closing of Entergy, and there was a hearing in Albany, and he's a fighter. He's like a dog with a bone. He doesn't stop. So I thank him, because we were not going to get the funding into the cessation fund, and he wouldn't let go of it. So before the budget was settled, there was $24 million that was put into the cessation fund. It's a fund, and I'm just going to tell you real quick, because I'm sure you've heard it before, but it's just a fund that helps in the transition of when the plant closes. And they're also, coal plants also can use the funding. So the $24 million was very important, because we'll be looking at probably tapping into that money in 2021. It's not the complete answer, but it helps us with the transition. And what I was really impressed with also, our new county exec, who is a Democrat, actually backed him up and said, yes, that money needs to be put in there for these communities. So, and Sandy Galiff was involved. So by everyone working together, this is how you get things done. These communities here might end up being the role model for this country, because you see so much going on and nothing happening. So, but we're seeing things move here. So I was very pleased Saturday when I got the phone call that the budget was settled and that money was in there. So we also have, the county exec was at the last Cortland Task Force meeting, and it just made me feel good to know that there's other people there supporting us, because he's offered us legal advice and their legal department, and also their lobbying. So we're going to have to do some lobbying also. So it's good to know that we also have that support. Sandy Galiff, we're going to be reading here in a minute. I normally don't like to do business on the organizational meeting, but this was like, I had to get this in, it's timely. Sandy Galiff is introducing a bill, and what the bill is the spent fuel rods that are over there now, they cannot be assessed. So we can't tax them because they're not, quote unquote, real property. They're not considered permanent structures, permanent property. But we all know those spent fuel casks are not going anywhere fast. So she's introducing into the New York State Assembly a bill that hopefully will allow us to assess the spent fuel, and this way we'll get we'll be able to tax it and get revenue from that. So there'll be more coming on that, but right now we're just doing, backing her up on that and saying, yes, we're in agreement with that. Nita Lowy, I've spoken about her before. She's introduced legislation, and she's also co-sponsored the Stranded Act, and that Stranded Act also pertains to the spent fuel. So we're kind of looking at the spent fuel in two different ways, either to assess it or have the Department of Energy compensate us for that. The state task force, the next meeting is next Thursday, April 12th. The company that, the consulting company that the state hired, DL English, will be giving their report of the redevelopment of the property of Entergy over there. So there's 3 parcels, and they will give their thoughts of if it can be redeveloped and what the potential, we could put on there, what their thoughts are. But we also have to remember, that's nice. We're looking for economic development, but we also have to remember that Entergy still owns this property. So it's not exactly ready now for redevelopment, but when it is, we'll be ready. We also are looking at redeveloping other pieces of property here in the village. I'm not ready to discuss anything about that yet, but we are looking into it. The Buchanan 2021 committee is meeting regularly. We have 2 members here. We have Bob Wheeler and we have Eileen Absinger here tonight, and they're doing a great job. So they're going to be looking at the redevelopment of the property. They're going to be looking at the safe decommissioning of the property, and whatever other things that come up, they will, it's a community advisory board, so they'll be able to have their input, and they are also going to look at ways to mitigate our loss here. So they're an integral part of this piece of this puzzle. There's many parts to this, and I've said before, and Nick always makes fun of me, but there's a lot of different balls in the air, but what it is, there's a lot of things that are happening. So I am not overly nervous. If there was nothing happening, I'd be nervous. I'd be like, oh God, what are we gonna do? But there's things that are happening, there's things that are in motion, but there's nothing completely settled yet. But we're working on an array of different things. So going forward, we are all going to work together. The community, the board, our planning, our zoning boards. This is kind of an all-hands-on-deck thing right now. And for the next 2 years, because April 2020 is when the first nuclear power plant, Unit 2, is scheduled to go down. So we have 2 years to figure some things out, and like I said, we are working on many of them. So I will continue to update everyone as I have more information. And then I think it was Rich again alluded to our birthday party. So I want everyone to save the date. The day before Father's Day, Saturday, June 16th, we are having a Village of Buchanan 90th birthday party. And we're going to have a picnic. It's going to be at the pavilion. It will be free to the residents. You will have to, there'll be more information coming. It'll be in our newsletter, but it will be free to the residents, but you have to come and register at the Village Hall and show ID. And we'll have entertainment and bouncy castles for big kids too. I hope. I like the bouncy castles. But anyhow, and so it should be good. It'll be a good community day. Come out, see your neighbors, have some fun, and we'll get together and celebrate our 90th birthday. Okay, that's all I have this evening. Let's see, what else? And now, we're going on to new business. And like I said, we don't normally do this, but we have to get this done. Nick, would you like to read number A under new business?
Is the tax cap override? Yeah.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
sure. Village of Buchanan resolution scheduling a public hearing on a proposed local law overriding the New York State property tax cap. whereas the state legislature and the governor recently enacted legislation that establishes a property tax cap on the amount that a local government's property tax levy can increase each year, and whereas this law is effective for local government's fiscal year beginning in 2018, and whereas under this law, the total amount to be raised through property taxes charged on the municipality's taxable assessed value of property will be capped at 2% or the rate of inflation, whichever is less, with some exceptions. And whereas the state legislation provides for the local governments to override the cap to protect the village from unforeseen financial circumstances, and whereas state legislation requires that in the event that an override is necessary, the law enabling it must already have been adopted by the Board of Trustees. And whereas the local law introductory number 2 of 2018 has been drafted to override the property tax cap law enacted by state legislature if necessary, now therefore be it resolved that the village board will conduct a public hearing at the village municipal building on May 1st, 2018 at 7:30 p.m. for the purpose of taking public comment on and giving due consideration to the enactment of a local law overriding the 2% property tax cap law enacted by state legislature. And be it further resolved that a copy of said local law is available at the village clerk's office for public inspection during regular business hours. And be it further resolved that the village clerk be and hereby is authorized and directed to publish notice of said public hearing in the official newspaper. Do you want to comment on that at all, or?
If you'd like to comment, would you?
Well,
like to
I will just briefly say, we do this every year, and it's not necessary, sometimes we do not override, sometimes we do not need this override, sometimes we do. It's a precautionary thing to put in place because should the circumstances require that our increase is more than 2%, we have to have this in place. So it's something we do as a matter of routine every year, whether or not we're overriding.
All right. On a motion?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Trustee Jackson, if you could read the next. Thank you.
Okay, this is the Village of Buchanan resolution in support of the Assembly Bill being introduced by our Assemblywoman Sandy Gallup, A 4687. Whereas spent nuclear fuel rods are being hosted at the Indian Point Energy Center in Buchanan, New York, and other nuclear power plants across the state and country, and whereas the federal government has failed to locate a permanent home for these spent fuel rods, and places like the Indian Point Energy Center nuclear power plant have become the storage site for this nuclear waste, and whereas the storage of aforementioned fuel rods have a negative effect on the community's property values of the Village of Buchanan and surrounding communities, and whereas the host community bears the burden and is absent of the ability to tax the rods, that burden is wholly uncompensated. And whereas proposed legislation by Assemblywoman Gallup would place a reasonable value on the rods and enable the host community to balance the adverse impact of the rods on property values with financial benefits to the whole community. And whereas the mayor, the village board of trustees are in favor of the passage of the Assembly Bill A 4687 and further urge our representatives to push for the passage of said bill. Therefore, it be resolved that the village clerk is hereby authorized to send a copy of this resolution to the Honorable Sandy Gallup, Assemblywoman representing the Village of Buchanan. And I again want to talk about Sandy's great work in making sure that not only the village is compensated, but the community as a whole, and that the fact that, you know, we've got to put pressure where pressure is needed in a united front.
Correct.
On a motion?
On a motion?
I'll move.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Comments from the floor? Any comments from the floor? Okay. Okay.
It's really about Indian Point, and you've answered an awful lot of
Oh,
my
okay.
questions this evening. But, Diane Tangent, 240 Catherine Street, Buchanan. I saw this article, I'm sure you did too, and it was in the Northern Westchester Examiner.
Oh, the mic.
Diane, I'm sorry.
Can you swing that mic, please, Diane?
Okay.
Is that
That's
on
better.
I saw this article
Okay.
in the Northern Westchester Examiner. It was a few weeks ago about safe storage of spent fuel at Indian Point needs to be addressed. In fact, I have a copy if you haven't seen it. And this person's, it was a letter to the editor, was concerned that the method that they're going to use is not, there's much more safer alternatives to the safe storage that they're going to be using or are currently using at Indian Point. And she cites two of them. One is called the Haas method, which utilizes reinforced concrete and steel structures around each waste container, protects these structures with mounds of concrete, steel, and gravel, and it spreads them out over a larger land area apart from each other rather than storing them near each other. And the other one is used in Missouri, and it's called the Holtec technology, and it's to build an ultra-secure underground configuration. Anyway, this system is also currently being used. So when I saw this article, it's also the biggest part of this article, the reason why the woman wrote it is because of how close the proximity to the Algonquin pipeline. That was really the beginning of her article. Then there was another article in the Journal News, I believe it was, and it was in regard to the pipeline, and that Governor Cuomo in 2016 asked for or was having a risk assessment done. You probably know all this for the pipeline. And he has not as yet released the results of that, and the local communities and Sandra Gallup and Terrence Murphy are all trying to get him to do it, and he hasn't. So all of this made me realize, I keep thinking about the revenue, but I'm really getting to think what we really have to be just as concerned about is the safety. And the further, as I began to explore further, oh, by the way, I also got a letter from Nita Lowy. It must be because I was in the paper. I have no idea. And she wrote to say that she was doing everything she could to mitigate the closing of Indian Point. And she told about the 3 pieces of legislation that she has introduced she wrote her letters to the Committee on Energy and Commerce, to 2 people, and these 3 bills she's introducing into legislation. The first one is the Safe and Secure Decommissioning Act. You probably know that. Maintain the NRC's emergency response and security requirements for plants until all the spent fuel on site is moved into dry task storage. Not sure what this means. It says it would ensure that spent fuel rods stored on the site at a closed nuclear facility remain safe and secure until an interim storage facility or permanent repository is operational. That's one. The second one is the Removing of Nuclear Waste from Our Communities Act would authorize the NRC to license interim storage facilities elsewhere in the country in the absence of a central repository. And as an aside, the federal government has really let us down because there is absolutely no central repository, even in the near future. And when I looked further, there's almost none in the world, quite frankly. I don't think any country really has anything. And finally, the this is the part I really wanted to know. The Redistribution of Fines to Our Communities Act would redistribute safety-related fines levied on plant owners to support the local tax base of a closed nuclear plant. And because communities will need all the funds. And they're the three bills. Also, as I did this, it was like opening a Pandora's box, I felt like. And with the Nuclear Waste Policy Act, they're supposed to have the safe and secure repository. And they assessed all of the plants all those years until 2012, from 1982 to 2012. They assessed the plants, and there's over $30 billion in that fund. And each year it generates $1.2 billion in interest. Is that the funds that she talks about in the fines, or no?
She's actually
should ask
talking
her,
two
not
things.
you.
She
I have a letter
did
that I'm
the
sending.
fine for monies because we're not sure if we're going to get money from the Department of Energy for the Stranded Act. So she has co-sponsored the Stranded Act. And what that says is, since the government has not found a permanent repository, and I know President Trump has put in this year another $100 million to relook at Yucca Mountain. Listen, it's taken 30 years and Yucca Mountain isn't open. Yucca Mountain is not going to open, okay? It's not happening. You know, I just don't see it happening because that's only one part of the problem. Now, when we get into the situation of the interim storage, they're looking at interim storage in West Texas, East New Mexico. That's where they're considering interim storage. So we, as a board and as a community, would like to have that spent fuel taken off of the property because then we can start to redevelop it. There's 100 acres that we can't touch at all. So we would prefer. But now what's going to happen, you know, you're starting to see in that article, you know, people have their own opinions. You're going to start having people everyone's going to suddenly become an expert on how this spent fuel should be done. We are not at all, we want it off the property. That's our preferred method. But we are not in favor in any way, shape, or form of having that spent fuel scattered all over the property. There's many reasons for that, you know, because there are parcels that are potentially, but we want it to be safe and secure. If that is scattered over a 240-acre property, imagine the amount of people that would need to have to secure that. You've got a lot of waterfront. It's not a secure situation. Where they're putting it on the storage pads, and a lot of my Buchanan 2021 has gone to see the storage pads, it's very high-tech security. So if we can't have it taken off, then we want to be compensated for it.
It's my understanding that it's only good for 100 years, and that the nuclear activity is actually can be for more than 1 million years.
Yeah.
And the reason why Yucca Mountain is because Nevada vetoed it because states were allowed to veto. The government overrode it. The Congress overrode it. Nevada brought them to court, and the court ruled in favor of Nevada because the containments at Yucca Mountain was only good for 700,000 years. And it could be more than 1 million years.
And they had some geological problems, too, with the
Right,
site.
it has to be, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. And I looked up even other countries, and none of them. Finland is the closest to having an underground storage,
Mm-hmm.
but they're really, if I knew years ago when I was
Yeah.
just a young,
Nobody knew.
when I was a
Yeah.
child, if what I knew now, I think we wouldn't.
Well, we were one of the
Absolutely.
first nuclear power plants within the country, so nuclear energy was in the early 60s, late 50s, was a new thing in this country. And when you get to the other countries, they reuse. We only use, like, I think 5% of the nuclear power. They reuse. They have a system to reuse it. Why we
Yeah,
don't in this
France
country?
does,
I
but
don't know.
It becomes very hot, too. They have some kind of a system.
Yeah.
It's very complicated, and there was so much that I read about
Yeah,
it, really.
yeah.
But it was like opening a Pandora's
Oh,
box. I
it's-
mean,
it's
that's,
a lot of-
that's the most important
It's
thing, is our
interesting.
safety.
That's it. But you know what? what they're talking about with the whole tech system, they're talking about basically encasing it in cement. It's staying there for perpetuity. It's there. Well, you know what? The Department of Energy is responsible for this, and they need to take care of this spent fuel. So
It also
that's,
seems like they passed the buck. The NRC, well, we don't do that, the NEC does that. Entergy has a certain amount of money that they have to use for decommissioning. I don't even know where I read this.
1.7 billion right now in the fund.
Oh, okay, I read that. They
And that's
didn't
for the
have that
3
much.
plants. That's for the 3, because
Oh,
one
okay.
has to
And
be
that if they didn't
decommissioned.
have enough, and then the NRC said, oh, that's not our job, that's the NEC's job, so
Yeah.
anyway, I don't know.
It's just, yeah, we're just on the forefront of this. I've been in contact with other communities who have gone through this. The assessment, the pipeline risk assessment, of course, of course, we all want to see the results of that.
So you do.
This is our community. Everyone is all upset, but we live here. This is our home. So of course, we want it to be safe.
I am writing a letter to Nita Lowy.
Okay, good.
And putting all these concerns that I
Yeah,
brought here
yeah.
tonight in the.
Diane, will those,
But it's been taking me quite a while. Would you like a copy of it?
I think I had seen it, but
Right.
I'm trying to remember, was that a letter to the editor, or was that an article in the paper?
The first one was a letter to the editor.
And
That's
who was
the
it,
one where she
who was it
suggests
from?
that it wasn't
Who was it
on.
from?
Okay, I have to put my glasses back on.
I think she had sent some letters out into the,
This
the
was
village.
from Paula Clare from Garrison.
Just,
Garrison.
not an organization, just from
No, it was a
an
woman.
individual, yeah.
No, just a citizen.
And
And this one
Diane's-
was an article in the paper.
right. So right now, Entergy does use the whole tech system,
Oh, okay.
and we did,
See, you know
we
so
did-
much
oh.
already.
We-
That was the first thing I
we
was
do,
going to say.
they do use the whole tech.
Congratulations to all of you, and I am so grateful that you are willing to serve our community, all of you.
Thank you, Diane.
I'm
Thank
sorry
you.
that I forgot to say
No,
that before.
that's fine.
No, I
Yeah.
really do, and,
But, yeah, it's,
doing-
it's the whole tech system that they currently use. They're planning on storing it on 2 pads.
Mm-hmm.
And,
does any stay in the, the nuclear vessels that,
it'll all come out of the pools.
No,
Everything
all the
comes-
fuel rods would come out and get stored on those
Aren't they safer
casks.
there, though, in the
No.
containment buildings?
No.
Aren't
They're
they
a
what?
They're a lot
They're not
safer.
in the containment building?
No.
No.
Okay.
And you know what? I just have to say this, because this is interesting. I was at a meeting, and I was up in Garrison, and we were talking about decommissioning, and I just happened to mention, I said, I do understand that when the spent fuel does come off of the Indian Point property, one of the plans, there was a 2002 report that came out that said that it would be taken by barge out of there, down the Hudson River, under the bridge, to a port in New Jersey, where at that point it would be transported by railroad. Well, I want to tell you, I almost got mugged in there. No, no, no. So I walked out of there and I said, you know what? That stuff is going to be there a long time, because there's going to be fighting on how that's going to be transported out of there.
What the problem is.
So that's why we're all thinking it's going to be there, but we want it to be safe also. It's got to be secure and,
In all my reading, it did say something about barges are the safest, but of course, we can't
You
get
know,
it anywhere
they have to
without-
refuel every couple of years, and for years, when they
Every 2
need,
years.
when they
Yeah,
need
the
new
last-
fuel,
Right.
when they need new fuel, it has been brought in, but nobody's advertising how this is being moved.
Yeah.
The stuff has obviously been moved because
Stories
it did
over the
not
years.
grow in Buchanan,
Right.
so.
Right.
the
There are
only
ways
problem,
to
it's not
move it.
energized, yeah. Once it goes in, it gets energized, and that's when it gets really
What's the name of the
dangerous.
fund that we're going to, that Sandra Gallif has, what's the name of that fund?
It's, she's just proposing, she's proposing legislation for the spent fuel cast to be allowed to be as assessed as property in the state. Nita Lowy was co-sponsored the Stranded Act, and that's asking the Department of Energy, because Entergy alone has paid $500 million into that fund that
It's
the
that
department.
fund, that's what I
Yes,
want to know,
yeah.
that's the fund.
Yeah, it's the
That has
Department
the
of Energy
30-some
mandals.
billion and
Yes,
the one-
yes,
okay.
yeah.
That's what I'm saying in my letter
Yeah.
to her too. Okay,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
Diane.
Diane.
Any other comments? No? Okay. On a motion?
So moved?
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Have a great Buchanan Day.